There we go. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me this evening. My name is Liz Maguire. I am the creator and curator of Flea Market Love Letters. It is fantastic to see you here virtually this evening with me. For anybody who isn't aware, today is International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day. I have been out celebrating. I live in Dublin, Ireland, despite the American accent. I've been out celebrating today, and I am so excited to be wrapping up my International Women's Day with you lovely folks this evening to talk about my passion project, Flea Market Love Letters, and some of the stories that we have from the last, I think it's 7 years now, 7 or 8 years of the project. We'll be coming up on a birthday this summer. But yeah, it's been a fantastic few years, and I'm so delighted to have anybody interested in the project and joining us this evening. So as I mentioned, we're going to kick off here. I have the session recording. If you are not interested in being recorded, just leave yourself on mute, as I said there. So this is just being recorded to share on YouTube for the folks who aren't able to join us this evening. We'll have them joining us virtually later. So you're very welcome to Handwritten History, Stories from the Flea Market Love Letters Archive. There we go. As I said, my name is Liz Maguire. I'm the creator and curator of the archive and the project that we're going to talk about this evening. I am a determined letter lover. You can see there I have my Write More Letters shirt on. That photo is actually from an event that I went to in London, Christmas before last. I was contacted by a musician who wanted to use the cover of an antique letter writing guide that I had as the artwork in a collage for his EP release. And so he got in touch and said, can I use your artwork? And I said, better than that, can I come to the launch? So I went to the launch in London, and his name is Nick Hilder. I talk about him sometimes on social media, but he has a wonderful couple songs that are under the EP, How to Write Love Letters, which is named after the guide that he saw on Flea Market Love Letters. So that's just one of the fun ways that Flea Market Love Letters collaborates and has different projects out in the ether. And it's a really cool expansion of kind of what I've been building here. But anyway, that's me at Nick's EP launch in 2022 or three. I think it was three. But as I said, I'm a letter lover. I'm an amateur preservationist. So I have been recording and collecting letters, postcards, photographs, all that kind of stuff for the last, I think it was 2009 or 10 I started. So we'll round up and say 15 years, almost a decade and a half. I love doing what I do, and I'm so glad to have anybody who's interested join and chat in the community. So whether that be this evening or be on the social media, on the Instagram page, on the YouTube, or get in touch with me via email, I love to hear from letter lovers. I am an advocate for the handwritten letter. During COVID, I became a participant in something which was called Penpalooza. It was started by a woman named Rachel Syme, who's a writer for The New Yorker, and she started a pen pal matching project, which was over on Twitter. And I became a pen pal to some folks there during the height of COVID. And then I became a letter writer for the charity From Me to You, which I still write for today, which is a UK-based charity that matches donated letters with individuals experiencing cancer. So I write letters every week for From Me to You. But that 88 number during COVID, I had a record 88 pen pals. So I didn't reply to all of them, but at one point I had 88 people sending me mail. So that was a great way to look forward to a bit of change in the routine during the height of lockdown. A fun fact about me is that I'm a postal museum buff. So I love going to postal museums. I've been to postal museums in Washington, D.C., in Paris, in London, in Germany. And I'm headed to a postal museum in Copenhagen this summer. I love postal museums. I love communication museums because I love communication. So what is Flea Market Love Letters? Flea Market Love Letters, I started collecting letters in the summer of 2009, and I established the project in 2017. For anybody who's not familiar with it, it is a digital archive of vintage love letters. I have some behind me here. I have some there. You're going to see them peppered throughout the evening. But generally what I do is I collect vintage love letters from flea markets. It's what it says on the tin. And I share them to social media and to our website. So I'll explain a little bit later in the evening about how the letters come into the archive, what happens with them when they arrive. But generally, that's what we do. We are a digital archive of vintage love letters. We were founded in Washington, D.C. I was working for an organization at the time that I really was only kind of doing half days for. It's been long enough now that I can confess that on tape. But in the afternoons, I was sort of trying to find something to kill time with. And I had moved into an apartment, and it had recently been it renovated after a fire before we lived there. And so when I found that out, I started thinking, oh, if there was a fire, what would I grab? Obviously, the usual stuff. But the first thing that came to my mind was I would grab my letters. So I had a few binders of letters on a bookshelf. And I thought, oh, I would grab these letters in the case of a fire. And then I thought, well, what am I doing with them not in case of a fire? So I did the most millennial thing possible. And I started to photograph the letters and put them onto Instagram and Tumblr, which I have been doing since 2017. In 2019, I left Tumblr, which was a blogging website. And I built the Flea Market Love Letters website that we know today. And all of the 3,000 plus letters that are in the archive are slowly being featured there. So we have about 700, close to 800 letters now, real letters that have been featured on the archive and on social media since we were started in 2017. This year, we're going at a great clip. Some years I'm a little bit faster at it than others. This year, we're doing really well. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the evening as well. But we have about 35 different series. That number is probably getting closer to 40. Hopefully by mid-year this year, we'll be looking at about 40 different series that will have been shared to the archive. So it is a pleasure to have some members of the flea market community here this evening. That is what Flea Market Love Letters is. We are a community-based space, and I would be remiss not to say that in the first 6 weeks of January of 2025, I received the most emails ever that I've received to the flea market website from folks who wanted to share their letter stories. So I'm always looking for letter stories for anybody who has letters of their own or have inherited letters or found letters at a market or in an antique store or something like that. But this has been a record year for folks getting in touch to talk about their letter stories and trying to find a place to appreciate or to learn more about antique or flea market letters. So it's fantastic. And it's, a passion project of mine, and I'm happy to be here and to host. So this is an idea of what a good haul can look like for me. So these letters came from a flea market in New Jersey. I bought them from the seller, and I bought them for about $250 for this big stack of letters. It was probably somewhere between 200 to 300 letters. And there's several different series or groups of letters that are in this mix. Some probably aren't even focused. I just remember spreading this out to kind of get a shot to give an impression about what it can be like. But yeah, this is my happy place, is knee deep in old envelopes and just learning the stories, which is why I think it's going to be a fun evening this evening, because we're going to focus on what makes me happy, which is the stories. So real quickly, Flea Market Love Letters works. I have it down to a system. So the letters are acquired. You can see they're in a shoebox. Oftentimes letters will come in a shoebox, in a Ziploc bag, in a shopping bag. They will come in all sorts of forms, but they will come to me as thus. And then I will, sometimes I'll get started working with them right away, or I will get started working with them a little bit later. But generally, I'll put them into a chronological order. And then I will catalog them. So what cataloging them means is that I will take them from their acquisition stage into chronologically ordering them. I chronologically order by the date on the letter or by the postmark on the envelope. If I don't have either of those things, then I have to wait until I've read the series to try and contextually place a letter. And sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's just it's a miscellaneous letter in a group of letters, which is fine as well. But I try and put them into a timeline as efficiently as possible before I start photographing and transcribing. But that's what cataloging means, is I put them into binder sleeves and I organize them by date. And then I just record them onto a spreadsheet. I have the date of the letters, the quantity of the letters. Nowadays, I'm recording where they're from. I wasn't always doing that because I guess I trusted myself to have an elastic memory, but that's going on me. So nowadays I'm recording kind of where they're from, if I remember kind of whether they were a gift or I bought them or someone sent them to me. And then I move on to photographing and transcribing. So photographing and transcribing the letters happens when I am ready to go forward with the series. So I have, like I said there on the last slide, I have about 3,000 letters in the archive. Some of those I've had as long as I've had the archive. Others I got last week. I don't really have any particular reason for choosing a series to feature other than I just kind of flip through either the catalog, or I might grab a binder off a shelf, and if it speaks to me on that day, I'll go with it. But generally, I photograph and transcribe at the same time, and I'm oftentimes transcribing at the exact same time that I'm posting the letters. So as they're going up on the website or they're going up on social media, I sometimes get DMs or messages from people, particularly on the Instagram, where they want to know the conclusion, or they want to know what happens at the end of the letters, and I have to break their heart and say I'm right there with them. I'm maybe a letter ahead, but I'm very rarely posting anything that's not a week or two along my schedule of where I am with the letters as well, which is fun because, like I said, it's a community. So I'm reading the letters the same time that the community is reading the letters. So that's always really fun. And posting the letters. So, like I said, I'm posting about 2 to 3 weeks out from when I'm generally working with the letter, and I'm posting to our social media and to our website. We have all of our featured series so far are on our website. They're all up as blog posts, so people can read the series for free. They can sit down and read from start to finish for a series, or they can use our search feature to look for certain dates or for certain words. And I've had a few people get in touch who are history students or amateur historians who have found, a certain particular time period that they're really interested in, and they're able to kind of niche down into that on the website, which is one of the reasons that I built the website the way I have. And I'm really, really happy that folks can use it intuitively. This is an idea here, like I said, about those 35 plus series that we have. This is an idea of the timeline that we have shared so far since our start in 2017. So I've got a few slides of these, so we'll flip through them quickly, but this gives you an idea. These are the various series, and the dates beside them are the dates that we have letters. So in some cases, I have letters from 1917 to 1919. In another case, I might have 1919 to 43. 1943, but that case could be that I have 10 letters from 1919 and I've got one letter from 1943. So I don't necessarily have all the letters from 1919 to 1943, but that just gives you an idea of the time period that I have various collections or series of letters from. I should also say that a series of letters is, for me, anything more than 2 letters. So I do have a miscellaneous section on the website and as part of the project, and I have a few letters this evening that I'll talk about, which are miscellaneous, but these are complete series. So these are more than 2 letters that are featured on the website. So we've got a few of these. For a time, really, there was a lot of 1940s letters that were going up. My sweet spot is the 1930s. I love the 1920s, 1930s. But a lot of people always think of the 1940s as when romantic love letters were happening. So people really love to engage with the World War II letters, but I like to make sure that we have a nice spread of letters in history for people to engage with and to really read and live amongst. But yeah, so there's this year we're close to 40. I think we'll break 40 series this year. I should also say that we have our name, Flea Market Love Letters, comes from the very simple fact that they're love letters bought at flea markets, but it does not only indicate romantic letters. It also includes familial letters, friendly letters, letters between colleagues or friends. It is really the definition of all the different types of love. So it is, while we do have several romantic series, we do also really try and broaden the definition of love as Flea Market Love Letters. So what we're all here for this evening is letter writing and social history. So I was introduced to the term social history a few years ago by an author named Kate Thompson, who has very generously actually included Flea Market Love Letters in her latest book, at the conclusion, to kind of talk about history and letter writing, and it's really nice to kind of have that link again with Kate. But Kate introduced me to the concept of social history, and I don't have a background in history. I didn't study history. I'm just very interested in it, so I like the concept of social history and all that entails. So what we're going to do now is we're going to enjoy a video which I had produced for the project last year. It's about 9 to 10 minutes long, but what we're going to do is, I'm going to play that video. And the reason I chose to play that this evening is because I, for that video, had voice actors. So I had 2 voice actors who came in and they read 4 different letters from the archive. So it's a really nice way, rather than me sitting here, and I will later read off a bunch of letters to you, but this is a nice interactive way to get a feel for the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip to the next slide, set that playing. I should have sound enabled. If I don't, or if anybody can't hear, just drop into the chat to let me know, but we should be okay for the evening. Let's hope. Now I just need my Wi-Fi to work. If it doesn't, it's okay. I can also talk about letters for a while. I've done this before. Give it another second here. Ah, see, patience rewards. So this should work. If it doesn't, again, we'll just tuck and roll.
Flea Market Love Letters is a digital archive of vintage love letters.
Can everybody hear this?
We believe everyone has a letter story.
Let me know if you can.
Tucked in forgotten shoeboxes on high shelves, letters tell us the real stories of everyday men and women. Written between friends, family, and lovers, letters paint the portrait of us for what it must have been like to live through some of the most significant moments in history. In the 1910s, the Titanic sank, the Oreo cookie was invented, and a global pandemic known as the Spanish flu swept the world. In 1914, World War I broke out, and in 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. By the end of World War I in 1918, some 4 million American men had served in the United States Army for the war effort. For many of the men enlisted in the war, letters were a link with the homes and the families they had left behind. Two brothers, Rex and Alfred Green, shared their experiences of the war in letters home to their mother in New Mexico.
November 13, 1918. Dear Mama, I received your most welcome letter today, and was certainly glad to hear that you and Papa and sisters were well. I'm well and feeling fine. Glad that Rex is all right. We are still under quarantine, but don't think it will be long before we can get liberty. I got a letter from Rex a day or so ago. He said he was all right. Well, it was certainly too bad about Bud Blanksy getting killed. Well, we got word here that the war is all over now. Maybe some of the boys will be coming back to Hope before long. I don't expect to get back for some time yet. There isn't no news to write, so I must close. Tell Papa and girls hello for me, and for them to write often. Well, must close. Answer soon. Your loving son, A.N. Green.
In the 1920s, women gained the vote, Reese's candies were invented, and prohibition swept the United States. While many sexual and gender morales were fast changing in the post-war generation, progress came slowly. Thelma Pierce Crawford's letters are a time capsule of this era. Written to her beau back home in Georgia, Thelma's letters tell of the high life in 1920s New York City.
February 21st, 1920. Dearest Kay, above all things, for you to call me a vamp. Please, you don't really think it, do you? Why did you do it? I am not one at all, 'cause a vamp is one who encourages attention without meaning it, and I never encourage attention without meaning it. So there. You were awfully sweet to send me the dainty card Valentine's. I did appreciate it so much because you sent it and the thought that prompted you to send it. Now, as for coming home, I am still weighing the balance, and I appreciate your advice so much. It brought out another side to me. I am trying to see which will be best, so I'm just waiting for viewing it from all sides. I see even you hadn't up until now thought that I am really and truly earnest with my work. Why is it people think that? I can't see 'cause I am. I have had a good time all my life, and now I want to be worthwhile. I am not a butterfly any longer. I've seen one or two good shows lately and been to the opera twice. I saw and heard Caruso and Metzinor in Samson and Delilah, then Farrar in Madame Butterfly. Both were perfectly wonderful, and so I enjoyed them so very much. Also been to several dances, and I'm going to one next week. I'm getting into the swing again, and I'm really getting crazy about it again, which I didn't think that I would ever do for a while. I think you wrote me an awfully curt little note. You surely must be busy or something. You didn't even tell me where you've been going so much. Now, don't forget to write real soon, too. Thelma.
In the 1940s, The Bikini debuted, George Orwell's 1984 was first published, and World War II raged across Europe. This is perhaps the time period folks think of when they think of letters. There were an estimated 556 million pieces of email sent to U.S. servicemen overseas from 1942 to the end of the war, with approximately 510 million pieces in return from the front lines. Letters connected men and women abroad with their homes, like Bill Ahern from Elizabeth, New Jersey, who wrote to his mom and pop from 1943 to 1945.
December 26, 1944. France. Dear Mom and Pop, you'll never guess what arrived today in the mail. One day late for Christmas, but nonetheless welcome. A little RCA black radio, fresh from the US and the black market. It arrived in good condition in Dad's silver-painted handmade box, which was used to start our fire tonight. And there was one tab broken, but as I said, that was easily fixed. I took it over to Joe Bender, and in half an hour it had battery and a new tube and was playing Dolly with a hole in her stocking. Music coming directly from the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Tonight, this far, we have been able to get Sally, the hang-up girl of the US Army, BBC London, the Army Station in Italy and Radio Rome, and the Blue Danube from Vienna, even a short-wave broadcast from the States. I've scratched WA December 25th, 1944 on the front, and I'm going to put the name of every place I take it. You better hope Berlin gets it soon. I'm glad you finally received some mail from me, as I'm sure you must have worried and wondered what was up. All the fellows say their mail hasn't been getting through. It sure wasn't because of any mail on my part. We are still in the same country, the same place. The two enclosed letters are the same two I wrote you when I first came to France. Also enclosed are 3 pictures which I don't believe you've seen. One is of the hotels I've stayed in, another of the result of a B-17 with a bathroom sink, the only thing left upstairs. Last, drinking beer in a tavern and having lots of fun. And boy, you should hear that radio give out. I have it right alongside of my bed, with a few pictures of the folks and the pin-up Hedy Lamarr sent us. Oh, did I tell you about that one night with nothing to do and a wall almost filled with pin-ups? Some said Hedy Lamarr would look good in that spot. And then someone said, let's write her. And we did. Each of us, 11 of us, signed the letter. Thursday, 11 pin-ups autographed by Hedy. What a line we handed her. Even better than Ellie and I used to do back in the 30s. Well, till tomorrow. Love. Bill.
After the war, a young woman from Pennsylvania named Jean Loudon volunteered for the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, or UNRWA. UNRWA provided economic assistance to European nations after World War II to repatriate and assist refugees who had come under Allied control. Jean spent time distributing food, clothes, cigarettes, and goodwill. A handful of those whose lives she touched wrote to her sister Vera.
December 26, 1945. Dear Vera, in the first place, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from Dutch people. You may be surprised to hear from us, but we know your sister, Jean. We met your sister last summer. She was stationed here in our village last summer in the UNNRA camp. My brother was there quite often, and one night he came home with her to pay a visit at our house, for she didn't like that camp. She always called my brother General Montgomery because he was wearing a Canadian uniform. We haven't heard from her since she left Hatert. How we would ask you if you will be good to write us for a small note back and tell us some about her, and will you give me her address at least if she's still in the army? I am a sister of Chris and have only seen her once, and I'll never forget that cigarette she gave. They are very hard to get here, so I'll ask you if you could send me some, and I'll send you a nice souvenir from Holland. I'm 17 years old, and my brother is only 12 years. Well, dear Vera, I'll close now, hoping to hear soon from you. Kindest regards and best wishes from brother, father, and 9 children, but special regards from Chris and myself. Your Dutch friend, Mary Vonk.
It's the honor of Flea Market Love Letters Archive to bring you these letters and stories. Understanding the role of letters in history, we created the Write More Letters project, which supports U.S. veterans through the sale of teas, totes, and mugs. To support the fundraiser or explore more of the archive, please visit fleamarketloveletters.com to learn more.
So thank you, everyone, for joining me this evening. Hopefully that was a little bit more interesting than me reading mail to you. That was an exciting project I got to work on. But yeah, so that's a little bit of the taste of some of the letters. We won't cover the exact same letters this evening, but that hopefully will put you in the mood for the next little while that we'll be together. So this letter that I've chosen this evening from 1858 is a letter that I discovered only in January of this year as part of the miscellaneous collection. I was going through the archive to find generally just letters to share out. I was really feeling that I didn't have it in me to do a whole big series. They do take a while. I had one series that took me 7 months. I type all the letters, I photograph them all. It does take a little bit of time. So sometimes to get the wheels going, I'll pick a miscellaneous letter or two. And this year I've chosen quite a few, but it's proven to be a really good strategy just to find some fantastic letters, and this letter being one of them. So this is from 1858. This is not the oldest letter that I have in the archive. The oldest letter that I have in the archive, as far as I can tell, is 1838. That's not up on the project yet, generally just because it's legal agreements and it's not very scintillating nor interesting. It's beautiful, and it will be featured at some point, I'm sure. But the reason that this letter was included and has been featured is because it is actually a very personal letter for the time period. Generally, the letters would be sort of, dealings between lawyers or farmers and lawyers, or lawyers and lawyers. There's a lot of lawyers in the oldest letters that I have. And in this instance, it is a gentleman, M. Kinmore, who is writing to his sister. So this letter in itself, you can see there on the penmanship on the side, is absolutely beautiful. And it is just spectacular to have. I'm delighted to have found it and to have it in the project. I don't remember where it came from. Almost certainly it came from a flea market. I don't remember where or when, but I do know that we've had it in the archive for some time, and I found it this January. So that's how this process works. I go through and I pick letters that I think are interesting. So I've pulled a few quotes from this letter. I, again, won't subject you to a much less elegant performance than the guys did in the video for me there, but this is an idea to tell you. So it says, "Dear sister, I have just received your kind letter. My heart did rejoice to hear that you was well and able to work some, for it helps to drive dull care away. But oh, how grieved I felt when I thought how many miles separated us from each other, that we could not enjoy a visit with one another oftener. I often think of you, though far away, yet I have neglected to write to you. But if you knew the reason, I think you would excuse me. First, I have a large farm to work, for I hardly see 1 mint to spare, and I was very sick 3 months last spring. No one thought I would ever recover. I was obliged to have watchers 4 weeks, but I am yet spared to take care of my family, that my health is poor, and the doctor says I have the liver complaint. The rest of the family is well, as usual. R is troubled very much with his old complaint, a bad cough every winter. Jane has been here since July. Her health has been very good till the last 2 weeks. She has had a hard time with her teeth and face. I think she will stay here till spring. Oh, how I want to see you. I could talk all night, though my head aches badly. Oh, I wish when you leave Cortand, WM, not sure what that means, would think he could come west somewhere if he didn't like it, here to come to Indiana or Illinois or someplace that suits him best." So you'll see there that there's absolutely no punctuation in that letter. It is purely stream of consciousness. There is no commas, ampersands, dashes. It is purely stream of consciousness. And the reason that I chose to include this letter is because it is quite simply beautiful. It is the fact that in 1858, a brother wrote to his sister and said, spoiler alert, I've been really, really sick for 3 months. Didn't tell you, but I almost died. But it would be great if you could come visit. Sorry, you can't. I have a really bad headache. Because it's life lived every day. It's history unfolding. And don't worry, I did spare you from about the page that's about the number of cows that he has on his farm. Again, we're talking 1800s letters. They are very much lawyer to lawyer or very itemized price lists of farm stock. So this is a beautiful letter, and I'm delighted to have it in the project. And I think it's, forgive me if I'm misremembering, but I think it's about 167 years old, 166, 67 years old. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to have it today. This next letter is from 1915, and this is another miscellaneous letter that I recently discovered, and I absolutely love it. It is fantastic, and it's not just because it was on my birthday in 1915, 110 years ago. It was it 110 years ago? I shouldn't do math this late at night, just ignore it. But anyway, this is a letter from Ward, and he's writing to his girlfriend, and I think the best thing is to just let Ward speak for himself. My own dear girl, as I am so joyful tonight, I thought I better write and tell you about it. It's about the robbery. There was no robbery at all. Mrs. Porter found the purse this morning right where she put it, in one of the parlors on the back of a chair covered up with pillows. She told Mr. Porter and made him promise not to tell. But he told me tonight. When he first told me it was gone, I said to him, I hope you will find it. They did not think of me taking it, but some of the townspeople would think that I stole it. The way he came to tell me was when I came downstairs this evening, I stepped on something under the rug. So I lifted up the rug, and there was the purse. So I went out to the kitchen where they both were and asked if they had two purses of about the same kind, and she said no. And she wanted to know why I told her. I stepped on one when I came down the stairs. Mr. Porter said often she had gone upstairs, that it was the lost purse, and that he came near laughing when I was talking to her about it. She denied its being the same one that was lost. They are going to keep it a secret around here because people would bother them and laugh at her for being forgetful for where she put it. You do not know how pleased I am to hear it has been found. I hope you have not tired of reading all about it. I enjoy writing about it anyway. Come out now, dearie. You need not be afraid of robbers. They have gone uptown tonight to some supper, so I am all alone. We'll close now with love and kisses. Ward. So I discovered this letter probably about 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks ago in January, and I love it. It's probably one of my favorite letters I've ever found. I don't have any other letters that go with it. It's not part of a series. It's a one-off. It's miscellaneous. But come out now, dearie. You need not be afraid of robbers. If I were a tattoo person, I'd probably get that tattooed, if I'm being honest. It's just a fantastic letter. It's so visual, so evocative. Obviously, Ward, from what I can tell, is living in some kind of boarding house. And he lives with Mr. and Mrs. Porter, and Mrs. Porter is forgetful, and they're trying to, the purse was found. Nobody needs to worry about it. We don't need to know where it was found. It just was. Don't worry about it. But obviously, Ward decides to write to his dear girl and tell her the story. It's just fantastic. If you can't tell, I love letters. So this is a letter from 1922 from the Kluppelberg series. In this series, we have letters from 1920 to 1921, and we have about 24 letters in that series. You will have heard the Kluppelberg letters already. They're the Thelma Crawford letters that were read in the video there. This is not one of those letters. This is actually, because I'm a huge nerd, this is a letter from 1922, March 8th. So this is from today, from 1922. And I just wanted to this is the picture of the letter and just kind of situate the fact that these letters are, while they're historical, still very relevant, both in time and subject, but also it can be really fun to go to the project and see what letters were written on a certain day and what was going on. Because the project is the size that it is, there are sometimes letters from 1921 to 1944 to all over the place. So it's building a really cool kind of calendar that I'd love to do something with eventually. But for the time being, we'll talk about March 8th, 1922. Dearest Kay, I haven't heard from you since my last letter, so you see I am being awfully good in writing you so soon again. I haven't anything to write, but I am just writing. Oh, I have some news. I am got a raise, $5 a week raise. Don't that sound good? I surely did feel good over it and still do. I have been sketching lately with my pen, not using any pencil first. Don't you think that I'm getting pretty good? Someone came in the office the other day, a very well-known advertising man, and he was looking at my work, and that was the criticism he gave me. He said that my pencil lines were beautiful, and I usually ruined it when I put it in pen, or at least lost the free, easy strike that I had in pencil, and said that I would get over that if I would try sketching in ink and leave off pencil. I looked at him as if he was crazy, not thinking I could do it, but I tried it, and gee, but it's lots of fun. Of course, I will be some time yet before I will be able to get down smooth, but I am on my way, and I am surely glad. How is work, sweetheart? You must be working awfully hard because you don't write to me. I surely hope that everything is running smooth. I am awfully glad that you are back with Bates until something better turns up. Must say goodnight and get some sleep. Bye. Bye. Loads of love to you from me. P.S. How is the Paris Prize coming? How did the first one come out? I'm crazy to hear about it. Here's luck to you and lots of it, for you are deserving of the best. Love again, Thelma. So this is a fantastic letter. Again, I've said that about every single one. Spoiler alert, I love all my letters. But this section here I've gone back to about I've been sketching lately with my pen, not using anything. Thelma has gone to New York from Georgia to work in advertising. She's basically the Mad Men before Mad Men, about 40 years before Mad Men happened. And she talks in this example about the advertising man coming and giving her the advice about her drawings and etc. And the reason that I want to emphasize this as being so incredibly cool is not only is she in New York in the 1920s, but she is also a career woman in New York in the 1920s who has a boyfriend who's states away, who she keeps up with via letter, but who she actually ends up marrying. So she ends up marrying Adolf E. Kluppelberg, Adolf Emil Kluppelberg. You can see this is this is from the newspaper, the announcement of their wedding, from I think it's 1922 or 1923. Anyway, they get married, they have a great time, and this text that I have here comes from this article that's on the right hand side. So this was written in the Macon Telegraph in 1928, and it says, "It is the same desire to succeed and that same stick-at-itiness that is the secret of the truly remarkable success Thelma has achieved. It has been told once or twice in the column how she went to Washington City and then to New York and all the wonderful things she did in both places. Her marriage to a young architect, equally successful, has been related. And stories have been told of the studio in their home where she works on one side and he on the other, of hurry-up orders completed in an hour's time with a fat check to deposit as the result." So I love this. I love the fact that Adolf and Thelma not only got married, but they both kept their careers as an architect and an advertising woman, and the fact that they had a home office. It just makes me so happy. And that little artist up in the corner there is an example of how Thelma described herself in a 1920s census. So someone would have knocked on the door, asked her about her age, her marriage status, her education, and her career, and she described herself as an artist. So Thelma is, while I love every letter differently, Thelma is definitely sweet to my heart and one of the stories of the archive that I'm delighted to share with you this evening. The 1924 letters from the Stalker letter here is from the Stalker series. We've got 33 letters from that series, dating from 1918 to 1929. Again, this is one of those instances where we are not necessarily every day we have a letter. We have letters from 1918 to 1929, but we have a significant number from 1924 because that is when the Stalker family go on a great European trip. So the Stalker family are based in the States. They're all over there. And as would have been the tradition in the early 20th century, they go on a grand European tour. This grand European tour, it's a mother, a father, and a son who go on the tour, is paid for by the mother's parents, Papa and Mama. And so she is writing letters back to her parents to tell them what this trip has been like. And this letter is from Lucerne. So it's important as well to remember, it won't come up in this section that I've chosen, but in this series, there are also, you will see what comes up. But in an example of that, there are dozens, and they are all relevant to the areas that they visit. And they are also all very relevant to the fact that this is almost immediately post-war. So there's several references in letters that aren't included this evening, which reference town squares after World War I. They reference local governments after World War I. They reference memorials after, you get where I'm going with this. So this is tourism that's happening less than 10 years after the Great War and 20 years, 15 or 20 years before the next war. So it's just really fascinating when you consider the timeline and where this all sits. I could go on, but we'll talk about the Stalker letters. So this is Hotel Therese in Lucerne, Switzerland. Forgive me if I butcher any of the pronunciations on this. I am an American and I am a bit tired. So we're just going to roll. So, dear Papa and Mama, this is the loveliest place we have been in yet, and this is the loveliest hotel. We reached here about midnight Monday evening, so it was dark and we began climbing, though we could see nothing. When we reached the hotel, the landlady and her daughters were at the door waiting for us as though we were old friends. The hotel itself is most attractive, and when we woke up yesterday morning, we found a French door leading from our room out onto a veranda, from which there is a grandest view over Lake Lucerne to Mount Pilatus on the other side and the Rigi on the other. When we came down to breakfast, our table was reserved for us on the veranda just under our bedroom one, so we have all our meals out there. Letters, 2 of them from you, were waiting for us on our arrival, and we were so glad to hear you had not yet heard from us since we reached Europe. In the morning yesterday, we started out for a walk. Lucerne is as beautiful as any place could possibly be, built around the curving shore of the lake with Mount Pilatus, a huge mountain, on one side and the Rigi on the other, and many white mountains in every other direction. First of all, we went out to the wonderful Lion of Lucerne, a huge sandstone cliff with the most lifelike carving of a lion on the side of the cliff, cut out of solid stone. We have been back to it several times, for it is most cool and comfortable in that spot and so wonderful to look upon. So these 2 pictures on the side, that is her original photograph from 1924 of the Lucerne Lion, and her caption, if you will, the Lion of Lucerne, Switzerland. And the reason that I've decided to end this evening on this letter is because in the winter of 2019, my husband and I decided to take a trip in February of 2020, which would end up being about 3 weeks before COVID and everyone was grounded. But we got one trip in 2020 and we were going to Switzerland. And we were planning our trip in January or so. And I was working downstairs. I was working on Flea Market. I was typing up one evening, typing up the letters one evening. And it was a new collection of letters. It was the stalker letters. And I was working away and I was just, as I said, reading and typing, reading and typing. And literally the letters kind of, the way the binder fell open, this Lucerne letter came up. And I thought, oh, that's funny. We're going to Switzerland. We had Lucerne was on our list. And then I read the letter and I thought, oh, this is spooky now that I'm like, I have this photograph of the Lucerne lion and it's been in this letter and we're going in 2 weeks or whatever it is. So in 2020, I brought the letter photograph of the Lucerne lion back to the Lucerne lion. So it was 98 years after or so. Again, not great at math. But it was a little bit under 100 years back to the photograph, and it was fantastic. I wouldn't recommend traveling with antique letters. They can be a little bit difficult, particularly when you're traveling with a carry-on. But it is one of my favorite things to do, and I like to return where possible. I like to return to spaces with. I've done it before. I've brought letters back to addresses. I've brought postcards around Paris and Dublin. I've brought historical postcards to the places that they depict to kind of show how it was depicted at the time the postcard was done to how it is now. And that all, it didn't all start with the Lucerne lion, but it was part of the adventure. So thank you very much for being here this evening. You have been a wonderful audience. I appreciate you so much for being here. If you enjoy this kind of thing, these are 3 fantastic books that I really recommend. Who's Got Mail? The History of Mail in America is a very digestible, fantastic book. The audiobook is about 4 hours long, maybe 3 hours long. Really, really fantastic. Talks about the history of mail and all the social and different elements that are part of the American quilt work. With the history of mail. Very, very interesting. You'll learn a lot of facts that will absolutely crush at your local trivia night when they ask you about post boxes and the history of doorbells. And then Marcel's Letters, A Font in the Search for One Man's Fate by Caroline Porter is a beautiful book about a number of letters which Caroline found at an antique store, and her process to turning the font from the letters into her font, which is Marcel's Letters font there. That is the handwriting of the gentleman Marcel. She turned it into a font, and the story of where those letters took her. She asks not to reveal the end of the story because it is so beautiful, and it is a book that stays with me to this day. Would be Marcel's Letters. And finally, Anna Quinlan's Write for Your Life, which was a book that came out just after COVID. in which she very kindly featured Flea Market Love Letters. We start a chapter talking about the first series we ever shared back in 2017. And she interviews a lot of people in that book, where she writes about a lot of people, from medical professionals to business people to people who curate Flea Market Love Letters, about the benefit of writing and what it does for our mental health and communication as a whole. So if you have enjoyed this evening, please keep an eye out on Flea Market Love Letters. I'm always updating the letters. But if you're like me and you would like to read a little bit more in depth, these are 3 great books. Finally, the last thing I'll say before I let everybody go home is the Write More Letters project. So it was mentioned there in the video. The Write More Letters project started in 2020, and all the proceeds from the fundraiser, which can be found on the website, go to a US-based charity called Hope for the Warriors, which benefits US veterans and military families. So I chose to work with that charity because so many of the letters are affiliated or associated with veterans. And I don't make any money off of the Flea Market Love Letters project. It is entirely a non-for-profit. So any money that comes into the project, I wanted to put into a charity. So any speaker fees or any collaboration fees I get go into charity. And any Write More Letters proceeds go to Hope for the Warriors as well. So thank you very much for being here this evening. You have been fantastic. I'm going to kill the recording now for anybody at home. You won't get to stay for the salacious Q&A that may happen. But I have really, really appreciated everybody who was able to join.